My husband packed his bags and said, "I'm leaving you for someone who appreciates me." I smiled calmly and said, "That's wonderful, honey." He looked confused. What he didn't know was that his new love had been sending me screenshots for months. The next morning, he called me crying, and when I heard what she did to him, I couldn't stop laughing. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. He zipped the suitcase closed. The sound was final, a sharp pronouncement in the quiet of our bedroom. He stood there, one hand on the handle, and cleared his throat. I watched from my dressing table, a hairbrush still in my hand. "I'm leaving you, Ava." He said it to the mirror, to my reflection, before turning to face me directly. He puffed out his chest. "I'm leaving you for someone who actually appreciates me." There was a pause. He had rehearsed this. I could see the script playing behind his eyes, anticipating my lines, the tears, the pleas, the confusion. I set the brush down slowly. The polished wood of the table was cool under my fingertips. "That's wonderful, honey," I said. His face did a fascinating thing. The confident mask cracked just at the edges. His eyebrows twitched. His mouth, which had been set in a firm line of resolution, went slack for a second. He blinked. "What?" I said, "That's wonderful." I offered a small, calm smile. "I'm happy for you." He stared. The silence stretched. He had expected a storm, and I had given him a placid, still lake. It threw him off his entire performance. He scrambled for his next line. You aren't upset." I tilted my head. "Should I be? You found appreciation. That's what you wanted." He took a step forward, the suitcase momentarily forgotten. "Don't you want to know who it is? Don't you want to know why?" I already knew who. I already knew why. But I understood this was a necessary scene for him. He needed to narrate his own exit, so I gave a slight, conceding nod. "If you feel you need to tell me." His moment was back. The indignation returned. "It's Chloe from the firm." He said the name with a flourish, watching for a wound that did not come. "She sees me. She values my mind, my ambition. She doesn't just sit there in this perfect museum, looking at me like I'm part of the decor." He gestured around the room, at the soft gray walls, the art we'd chosen together in Charleston, the linen curtains that caught the afternoon light just so. It was my design. It was my sanctuary. He had called it sterile for months. "She makes me feel alive," he continued, gaining steam. You're just calm all the time. It's like living with a serene statue. I need passion. I need excitement. I need to be seen asterisk." I listened. I let the words hang in the air between us. They were not new words. I had heard variations of them for over a year, whispered in arguments, implied in his sighs. They had just never been given this formal, theatrical delivery. "I see," I said finally. "That's it," he exploded. "I see. 15 years, Ava. 15 years, and that's all you have to say." "What would you like me to say, Marcus? You've made your declaration. You've packed your suitcase. You've told me I am inadequate. You seem to have everything worked out." My voice was even, measured. It was the voice I used with difficult clients who insisted on chrome finishes in a rustic kitchen. He sputtered. This was not the script. "Aren't you going to fight for us?" That almost made me laugh, a dry, soundless thing in my chest. "You just told me you found something better. Why would I fight to keep you where you don't want to be?" He was deflating. The grand exit was losing its grandeur. His anger was now tinged with confusion, and beneath that, a flicker of something like panic. He had wanted a dramatic break, a clean, painful severance he could use as a story. He was getting polite acquiescence. It was robbing him of his narrative. "Fine," he snapped, grabbing the suitcase handle again. "Fine, you're just proving my point. Ice cold. No heart. Chloe has 10 times your heart." "I'm sure she does," I agreed. He glared at me, a last, desperate attempt to provoke a reaction. I met his gaze and held it. My expression did not change. After a moment, he looked away, muttering something under his breath. He turned and walked out of our bedroom, the wheels of his suitcase clacking over the hardwood floor. I heard his footsteps down the hall, the jingle of his keys from the console table, the heavy open and definitive slam of the front door. The sound echoed through the house. Then, silence. It was a different silence than the one before. The air felt stiller, emptier. I sat on the edge of the bed on my side. I looked at the space where his suitcase had been on the duvet. There was a slight indentation from its weight. I did not cry. I did not rage. I felt a hollow space open up inside me, but it was not filled with grief. It was a void of anticipation. The waiting was over. The performance I had watched for months had reached its final act. I stood and walked to the window. His car was still in the driveway. He was probably sitting in it, waiting to see if I would run after him. I watched. A minute passed. Then the brake lights flashed and he backed out, turning down the street without a glance back at the house. I let the curtain fall back into place. My heart was beating a steady, firm rhythm in my chest. I walked back to my dressing table and picked up my phone. The screen was dark. I pressed the button and it lit up. I opened the messaging app and navigated past the usual threads: Rita, my sister, a few clients. I went to the one labeled unknown number. The last message was from 2 days ago, a screenshot of a text chain. On the left, Marcus's name. On the right, the bubble was pink. The preview text read, "I told her I work late again. She just said okay. Is she stupid or just doesn't care?" I opened the thread. I scrolled up slightly, not reading the months of exchanges in detail, just seeing the relentless cascade of them. Proof. A running commentary on my own marriage from the inside. The first message had come 5 months ago. A simple, chilling line from a number I did not recognize. "You don't know me, but you should. Your husband is a liar." Attached was a photo of Marcus's hand on a thigh that was not mine at a restaurant bar. I had not replied immediately. I had sat with it for a full day, the phone burning a hole in my pocket. Then I had typed a single word: "Go on." And she had. Now I typed a new message. My fingers were steady. "He's gone. He said he's with you now." The 3 dots appeared almost instantly. She was waiting. The reply came. "I know, he's texting me from the driveway. He's pissed you didn't cry. Thinks it. Sociopathic. LOL. A thin smile touched my lips. It felt strange on my face. "The plan continues," I wrote. "Obviously," she replied. "Hotel tonight. He's going to be insufferable. I'll record it." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I'm not doing you a favor. I'm just bored with him." I put the phone down, screen facing the table. I looked around my bedroom again, my space. It felt larger. The air felt easier to breathe. The serene statue he despised was made of something far harder than marble. It was made of patience. It was made of quiet, collected information. It was made of the certainty that some fires don't need to be fought. You simply let them burn themselves out, far away from anything you value. The hollow space inside me began to fill, not with heat, but with a cool, clear resolve. The first move was his. The next moves, all of them were mine. I picked up the hairbrush and finished what I had been doing. The bristles moved through my hair in smooth, even strokes. I placed the phone face down on the dressing table. The silence in the house was now a fact, not an interruption. I stood and walked out of the bedroom, my steps measured on the hallway floor. I did not glance at the empty hooks where his keys had been. I moved past the living room, through the formal dining area we almost never used, and into the west wing of the house. This was my territory. My home office was not a sterile space. It was a working library of textures and samples. One wall was lined with fabric swatches hanging on brass rods. Another held shelves of paint canisters and laminate samples. My large, oak desk sat before a window that looked out onto the garden. It was cluttered with sketchbooks, blueprints, and mood boards for a client's lake house. This was the heart of the appreciation he claimed I lacked. It was just directed at color, form, and function, not at him. I sat in my leather chair, the one perfectly broken into the shape of my body. I woke my desktop computer. The monitor glowed to life, illuminating a serene screensaver of Japanese Zen gardens. I moved the mouse and opened a file manager. I navigated past client folders, invoices, and project timelines. I clicked on a folder simply named Archives. It was password protected. I typed in the combination. Inside were subfolders, dated by month. The earliest was from 5 months ago. I opened it. The first file was a screenshot. It was the one I had received that first day. The image was clear. Marcus's hand, the one with the watch I'd given him for our 10th anniversary, resting on a woman's bare thigh at a dimly lit bar. The thumbnail was small, but I didn't need to enlarge it. The memory of receiving it was more vivid than the pixels. I had been in this same chair, reviewing a floor plan. My phone had buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it as spam. The preview text made me pause. "You don't know me, but you should." I opened it. There was the photo. Below it, a second message. "Your husband is a liar." My initial reaction was not anger. It was a profound, chilling clarity. It was the confirmation of a suspicion I had been quietly cataloging for months. The late nights that were too frequent, the new cologne, the way his phone was always face down, the defensive irritation when I asked simple questions. The photo was not a shock. It was a piece of evidence placed neatly into an existing file. I did not reply for 24 hours. I went about my day. I met with a client. I selected quartz countertops. I called my mother. I watched Marcus over dinner, nodding the ease with which he lied about his client dinner the night before, the very one captured in the photo. I observed the specific tilt of his head when he was being dishonest. I stored the observation. The next evening, I picked up my phone. I typed my reply to the unknown number. "Go on." The response was immediate, as if she had been waiting with the phone in her hand. "His name is Marcus Johnson. He works at Kensington and Lowe. He told me he's in a dead marriage. He said his wife is cold, boring, that she doesn't understand his drive." I read the words. They were his words. I recognized the phrases. They were the same grievances he had begun to mutter to me, disguised as casual complaints. "You're so content with everything," he'd say. "Don't you want more?" He had been testing his narrative on me first. "Who are you?" I typed back. "Chloe, I work in business development. He pursued me. I thought he was powerful, connected. He's just needy." That was the foundation. An alliance built not on friendship, but on mutual utility. She was my window into his betrayal. I was her, what? Her audience, her justification. Perhaps a way to alleviate a sliver of guilt by framing herself as the revealer of truth, not just the other woman. I began to save everything. I created the folder system that night. Every text she sent, I screenshotted and filed. Every photo, every audio snippet. She became surprisingly thorough. I opened a file from 3 months ago. It was a string of text messages between her and Marcus, which she had forwarded to me. "Marcus, asterisk, I can't stop thinking about you. You're a fire. Ava is just ashes, cold ashes. Chloe, asterisk, that's so poetic, babe. Did you just think of that? Marcus, asterisk for you, yes. She's let herself go, not like you. You're so alive. Chloe, asterisk, let herself go. She's an interior designer. Her Instagram is all curated aesthetics. Marcus, asterisk, it's a front. At home, she's in sweatpants. She doesn't try anymore." I remembered that day. I had been wearing linen trousers and a cashmere sweater. I had just finished a yoga session. The sweatpants were $300 tailored joggers. His description was not about my clothing. It was about his need to diminish my world to elevate his fantasy. Another file from 6 weeks ago, an audio message from Chloe. I clicked play. Her voice, slightly distorted by recording, filled the quiet room. "Listen to this, he's on a rant." There was a shuffling sound, then Marcus's voice, tinny and distant but clear. And she had the audacity to ask if I'd transferred the funds for the property tax. Like I'm her accountant. Like I don't have massive deals brewing. She doesn't see the big picture. She's stuck in the details of drapes and throw pillows. You see the man. The potential. I had stopped the audio there the first time. The property tax was due. I had asked a simple, necessary question. In his mind, it was an act of petty harassment. In Chloe's forwarded message, it was comic material. Her accompanying text read, "He's literally whining about adult responsibilities. The massive deal is a mid-tier commercial lease he's been dragging out for months. LOL." I scrolled through more. Dozens of files, hundreds of messages. Chloe's commentary evolved. The initial performative guilt faded, replaced by a detached anthropological amusement. She was studying him and reporting her findings to me. She mocked his vanity. He spends 20 minutes on his hair and still looks basic. His predictable seduction tactics. He tried to impress me by ordering the second most expensive wine. Not the most, the second most. So transparent. His growing dependency. He texts me good morning, good afternoon, and good night. It's suffocating. My role was to receive, to acknowledge. My replies were brief. Noted. Interesting. I see. I was a silent archivist, building a case not for a court of law, but for my own certainty. Each file was a brick in a wall between me and the marriage I thought I had. The wall was now complete. He had just finally noticed it was there. I minimized the archive folder. On my desktop, my email was open. I saw a new message from my lawyer, Helen, with the subject line, "Initial documents for review." I opened it. It was a standard, polite email about beginning the process of separation. It felt administrative, practical. It felt like the next logical step after 5 months of psychological preparation. I leaned back in my chair. The garden outside was growing dark. I had not turned on the lamp, so the room was lit only by the computer's blue glow and the last gray light of dusk. I felt a profound sense of order. The chaos was his. It was happening in hotel rooms and text threads I monitored. My space, this room, my mind, was ordered and calm. My phone, still on the dressing table upstairs, buzzed once. A new notification. I knew who it was. I would check it later. For now, I closed the archive folder, secured it, and opened the lake house blueprints. I traced a line with my finger, considering the flow from the kitchen to the patio. This was my focus. This was my appreciation. It was for spaces that held peace, not for men who brought chaos. The digital confidant had done her job. She had given me the gift of foresight. Now, it was time to plan the aftermath. I finished reviewing the lake house elevation plans just after 8. The house was quiet, a condition I was already adjusting to. I saved the file, shut down my computer, and went upstairs. I did not look into the master bedroom. Instead, I went to the guest room, opened the closet, and took out a small overnight bag. I packed a change of clothes, my toiletries, and my laptop. I placed the bag by the front door. Then I picked up my phone. There was the expected message from the unknown number. Unknown asterisk checked into the Laurent. He ordered champagne. He's pretending it's a habit. It's pathetic, sending pics. A series of images followed. A hotel room with stark, modern furniture. A bottle of mid-tier champagne in a silver bucket. Marcus, his smile too wide, holding a flute toward the camera. He looked like an actor in a bad commercial. I did not reply. I opened my contacts and called Rita. She answered on the second ring. "Tell me you're not sitting in that empty house alone." "I'm not. I'm leaving it. Can I come to you?" Her response was immediate. "I'm putting the kettle on. Drive safe." The 20-minute drive to Rita's neighborhood was a study in contrast. My street was wide, lined with mature trees and silent, set-back homes. Rita's street was narrower, with older, closely built houses whose front porches held bicycles and potted plants. Light and sound spilled from the windows. It felt alive. I parked behind her SUV and retrieved my bag. The front door swung open before I could knock. Rita stood there, her hair in a messy bun, wearing flannel pajama pants and a faded university sweatshirt. She said nothing, just opened her arms. I stepped into the hug. She held me tight for a long moment, then released me, taking my bag from my hand. "In here," she said, leading me down the hall to the kitchen. Rita's kitchen was the antithesis of my own. Where mine was a showpiece of clean lines and hidden appliances, hers was a warm, cluttered workshop. The smell of rosemary and baked bread lingered in the air. Mason jars filled with dry goods lined the counters. A half-knitted scarf was draped over a chair. The kettle began to whistle on the stove. "Chamomile or something stronger?" she asked, busying herself with cups. "Something stronger," I said. I slid onto a stool at the kitchen island. She nodded, putting the kettle aside and pulling a bottle of red wine from a rack. She poured 2 generous glasses and pushed one toward me. Then she leaned on the island across from me, holding her own glass, and waited. I took a sip. The wine was bold and slightly tart. I set the glass down and unlocked my phone. I opened the archive folder, selected the very first screenshot, the one of his hand on her thigh, and turned the screen to face Rita. She took the phone, her eyes scanned the image. Her expression did not change to shock or outrage. It settled into a hard, resigned understanding. She swiped to the next image, a text thread, then the next. She scrolled in silence for a full minute, her jaw tight. "How long?" she finally asked, her voice low. "The first one came 5 months ago." She looked up at me. "And you've known for 5 months. You've been living with this evidence, and you didn't tell me." "I needed to be sure," I said. "Not just of the affair, of my own reaction. If I had told you then, you would have rightly told me to throw him out. I wasn't ready to hear it. I needed to see it for myself on my own terms." Rita put the phone down on the counter between us. "Who is she?" "Her name is Chloe. She works with him. She's been sending me these." I gestured at the phone. "She contacted me." Rita's eyebrows shot up. "The mistress is your informant. What's her angle?" "Boredom, I think. Guilt, maybe. She thought he was a powerful executive. She found out he's a narcissistic man-child. I believe she finds it amusing to chronicle his downfall and send the notes to me." "So she's not in love with him?" "No, she's performing for an audience of one. Him, and now me." Rita took a long drink of her wine. "And he left today, for her." "He declared it, very dramatically. He said he was leaving me for someone who appreciates him. He expected a scene. I didn't give him one." A slow smile spread across Rita's face. It was the first genuine smile I had seen all day. "You didn't." "I told him it was wonderful. I wished him well." A laugh burst from her, short and sharp. "Oh, Ava, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. He must have been so confused." "He was. He tried to provoke me. He called me a serene statue. Ice cold." "Good," Rita said, the smile fading into something more serious. "Let him think that. Let him think he's broken free from some ice queen. It makes his eventual crash so much harder." She tapped the phone. "So you have this. What's your plan? A nasty divorce? Expose him to the firm?" I shook my head. "No, I've already contacted Helen. We'll start separation proceedings. Clean, quiet, and fast. I want him out of my life with as little friction as possible. The less I react, the more he will unravel on his own. He's already started. He's in a hotel room with a woman who is texting me mockery of his champagne order." Rita studied me. "You're not even angry in there, are you?" I considered the question. "I was months ago, but anger is exhausting. It's a fire you have to keep feeding. This," I pointed at the phone, "this turned anger into data. Data I can use. Now I feel resolve. He made his choice. My choice is to protect my peace and my assets. The best revenge is a life well lived, isn't that what they say?" "They do," Rita agreed. She refilled both our glasses. "So we watch. We wait. We let the chaos he chose consume him while you build a new foundation. He thinks he's the star of a tragic romance. He's actually the clown in a comedy he doesn't understand." "Exactly. And this Chloe, you trust her?" "I don't trust her motives, but I trust her self-interest. Her interests currently align with watching Marcus make a fool of himself. For now, that's useful." Rita raised her glass. "To useful alliances, and to the trash taking itself out." I clinked my glass against hers. "To peace and quiet." We drank. The wine warmed a path down my chest. The tension I had been carrying in my shoulders, a tension I hadn't even fully acknowledged, began to ease. This was my sanctuary. Not a perfectly decorated room, but this messy kitchen with this unwavering friend. "You'll stay here tonight," Rita stated. It wasn't a question. "The guest room is made up. We'll have breakfast. Then tomorrow we go see Helen together. We make it official." "Thank you, Rita." "Don't thank me. I've been waiting for this day. Not the betrayal part. The part where you finally see what I've seen for years. That man has been a weight around your neck. Now you get to breathe." She was right. For the first time in a long time, the air felt clear. The path ahead was not joyful, but it was clean. It was mine. The strategy was set: calm withdrawal, legal precision, and a front-row seat to the inevitable collapse of a fantasy built on lies. The support system was activated. The game was no longer his. It was ours. I woke in Rita's guest room to the smell of coffee and bacon. Sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains. For a moment, the previous day felt like a bad dream. Then I remembered the suitcase, the declaration, the archive on my computer. The reality was not a nightmare. It was a logistical problem I had already begun to solve. I felt a peculiar lightness. My phone, charging on the nightstand, buzzed, not once but several times in rapid succession. I picked it up. Unknown, *morning. The reality tour continues. A photo followed. It was a shot of a hotel bathroom. Sleek, gray tiles, a waterfall showerhead, expensive toiletries arranged artfully on the counter. It was aesthetically cold. Unknown, * he's already complained the water pressure isn't as good as at home. Another photo, this one of a room service tray. 2 half-eaten omelets, a crumpled linen napkin, a single rose in a thin vase. Unknown, * he gave me the rose, it's plastic. I'm not kidding, a plastic rose. A final message, text only. Unknown, * he keeps calling this place our haven. It's a hotel, Marcus. You check out on Sunday. I put the phone down without replying. I dressed in the clothes I'd packed, simple trousers and a sweater, and joined Rita in the kitchen. She slid a plate of eggs and bacon toward me and poured coffee into a large mug. Updates from the front, she asked, leaning against the counter with her own mug. I showed her the phone. She scrolled through the images, her mouth a flat line. Plastic rose, she said. That's almost poetic. He's trying to manufacture romance in a corporate box. How's the princess enjoying it? She's enjoying documenting it, I said, taking a bite of eggs. They were perfectly cooked. I think her amusement is the only thing keeping her there. Rita handed the phone back. So this is his grand love nest. A 4-star hotel room he can't afford long-term. He's trading a home for a waiting room. Her assessment was accurate. I could picture him there. Marcus had always been susceptible to surface appeal. The trendy hotel, the designer bath products, the minimalist decor, it would have initially felt like an upgrade to him. A symbol of a new, exciting life. But a symbol is not a foundation. The cracks were already appearing, transmitted to me in real time by his chosen companion. After breakfast, I borrowed Rita's laptop to check my personal email. There were 3 new messages. One from my lawyer, Helen, with attached preliminary separation documents to review. One from my security company, confirming the lock change request at my house was processed at 7:00 a.m. The last was a fraud alert from my credit card company. I opened it. It was a standard notification. Unusual activity detected on your account. I clicked for details. A charge for $487.62 at the Laurent Hotel, followed by a decline charge for $212.50 at the same merchant, flagged for review. I showed the screen to Rita. The first pinch. She peered at it. Room service and spa treatments already. He's burning through his fantasy fund fast. The declined charge is beautiful. Does he not realize you'd separate the finances? He hasn't thought that far ahead, I said. The script in his head ended with me begging. The practical consequences weren't in the scene. My phone buzzed again. A new string of messages, this time with video attachments. Unknown, * you have to see this. I told him the room was a bit corporate. Watch. I tapped the video. It was a short clip, likely recorded subtly. Marcus's voice, slightly off camera, was defensive. Corporate, it's minimalist, it's curated. Ava's stuff is so cluttered. All those textures and fabrics, it's oppressive. Chloe's voice, smooth and light. I don't know. Her living room on Instagram looked warm. This feels like a lobby. Well, this is our * space, Marcus insisted, his voice tightening. We can make it our own. The video ended. Another message followed, unknown * make it our own. With what? His suitcase. He's an idiot. I felt no vindication watching it, only validation. This was the man I had lived with. His critique of my design taste, which he had once claimed to love, was now a weapon to justify his choices. But the weapon was brittle. It could not withstand the slightest pressure, Not even a casual comment from the woman he left me for. Rita, reading over my shoulder, snorted. He's already on the defensive. Day 2. That's got to be a record. He needs her to validate his decision, I said, closing the video. He needs her to say, "You were right, Marcus. Your wife's taste is terrible and this hotel is paradise." She's not giving him that. She's questioning it. It undermines his entire narrative. And she's sending you the footage, Rita added. It's like he's performing a one-man play where the only audience member is secretly texting the director critiques. I spent the rest of the morning reviewing Helen's documents. They were straightforward. A separation agreement outlining the division of assets, the timeline, the expectation of no contact except through legal channels. I made a few notes and emailed them back with my approval to proceed. The process was clinical. It felt like dissolving a business partnership that had become unprofitable. In the afternoon, I drove back to my house. The new locks required a different key. It turned smoothly. The air inside was still and cool. I walked from room to room. I saw it with new eyes. It wasn't a museum or a place of oppression. It was a collection of choices I had made, objects I loved, a harmony I had built. His absence did not create a void. It removed a dissonant element. I went to the master bedroom. The indentation from his suitcase was gone from the duvet. I stripped the bed, bundled the sheets into the laundry, and remade it with fresh linens from the closet. It was a practical, symbolic act, erasing the physical memory of his departure. As I finished tucking in the corners, my phone buzzed with one final update for the day. Unknown, *, he just tried to use his credit card for dinner. It was declined. The look on his face was worth every second of this. He had to use his own card. He's in the bathroom making a call. I can hear him panicking. Thought you'd want to know. A moment later, a second message. Unknown, *, the bed is too firm. He snores. This is going to be a long weekend. I put the phone in my pocket. I opened the windows to let in the fresh afternoon air. The silence in the house was no longer the silence of waiting. It was the silence of resolution. His new love's nest was a financial strain, an aesthetic disappointment, and the residence of a woman who was already bored. My home was quiet, clean, and entirely mine. The contrast was the point. He had chosen the illusion. I was left with the substantial, quiet reality. And for the first time, I was certain which one would last. The next morning, I met Rita at her house. She was dressed in a sharp blazer and trousers, a visual statement of solidarity. "Ready to make it legal?" she asked, handing me a travel mug of coffee. "More than ready," I said. We drove downtown in silence, the city waking up around us. Helen's office was in a modern building of glass and steel. It felt appropriate, a place for cutting clean lines through messy lives. We were shown into a conference room with a view of the river. Helen entered moments later. She was a woman in her 50s with a calm, assessing gaze and no-nonsense demeanor. We had used her firm for the closing on our house. Now, we were here for the opposite transaction. "Ava," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Rita, please sit." She placed a thin folder on the table between us. "I've reviewed your preliminary notes. This seems straightforward, given the circumstances and your stated desire for a clean, uncontested separation. Are you certain he will not fight it?" "I am certain he is too preoccupied to fight it," I said. "But if he does, I am prepared." Helen nodded. "Good, let's go through the terms." She opened the folder. The document was dense with legal language, but Helen translated it into clear actions. The house, solely in my name due to an inheritance I'd used for the down payment, would remain mine. Our joint savings would be divided equitably. The investment accounts, which I had managed, would be split per the statement from the day he left. I had already frozen the joint checking and canceled all credit cards on which he was an authorized user. "You've been efficient," Helen noted, a hint of approval in her voice. "I had time to prepare," I said. She didn't ask for details. The only point of potential friction is his personal effects. He is entitled to retrieve them. "I've already packed them," I said. 3 boxes, they are in the garage. He can collect them at a scheduled time with a neutral party present. I will not be there." Helen made a note. "Sensible. I will contact his lawyer. Once he retains one and arrange it. Now, the matter of spousal support. She looked at me. Given the disparity in your incomes and the length of the marriage, you could be entitled to it from him. I had considered this. The idea of taking money from him felt like a tether, a continued connection. I waive it, I said. I want a clean, total severance, no ongoing obligations in either direction. Rita shifted beside me but said nothing. Helen studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. That will simplify things immensely. It may also compel him to sign quickly, to avoid the possibility of you changing your mind. She closed the folder. I'll have the final agreement drawn up by end of day tomorrow. We'll serve it electronically and via certified mail. Once he signs, you'll be formally separated. The divorce itself can follow in due course. The meeting lasted less than 40 minutes. It was a business consultation. When we stood to leave, Helen offered her hand again. You're handling this with remarkable clarity, Ava. It's the best way. Thank you, Helen. In the elevator, Rita let out a long breath. You're waiving support. That's a lot of money to leave on the table. It's the price of my freedom, I said. I don't want a single reason for him to ever contact me again. No annual reviews, no modifications. I want him to be a line item in my past, closed and settled. Back at Rita's, I set up at her kitchen table with my laptop. I logged into every financial portal, banking, investments, utilities. I changed passwords, removed his electronic access, and updated contact information. I filed a formal change of address with the post office, redirecting his mail to a P.O. box I'd rented in his name. Each step was a silent, digital severance of a tie. In the late afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was not the unknown number. It was Marcus. I showed the screen to Rita. Do I answer? On speaker, she said. Let's hear the performance. I accepted the call and placed the phone on the table between us. Hello, Marcus. His voice was tense, a low hiss. Ava, my card was declined. At the hotel, what did you do? I canceled the joint cards, I said, my tone even. As is my right, you'll need to use your personal accounts. My personal? Ava, that card was for household expenses. This is petty. This is beneath you. The household, as you defined it, no longer includes you, I said. Therefore, household expenses are no longer your concern, or mine for you. There was a sputtering silence on the other end. I could hear the hum of a hotel room in the background. You can't just cut me off like this. We need to talk about this like adults. My lawyer will be in touch with yours, I said. All discussions will go through them. It's cleaner that way. Your lawyer, you've already gotten a lawyer. His voice rose in pitch. This is moving too fast. I just left. We need space to think. You left, I repeated. You declared your new life. I am simply arranging the paperwork for the old one. I've packed your things. They're in the garage. Your lawyer can contact mine to arrange a time for you to collect them. The line was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. When he spoke again, the bluster was gone, replaced by a wheedling confusion. Ava, this isn't what I wanted. I just needed you to see, to wake up. I am awake, Marcus, more than ever. Good luck with your new situation. I ended the call. Rita stared at the phone, then at me. A slow grin spread across her face. He's realizing the script is wrong. He thought he was the director, and he's just found out he's an actor with no lines. My own hands were steady. The administrative tasks, the cold finality of the legal and financial steps, were more empowering than any outburst could have been. This was the real reaction he had failed to anticipate. Not tears, but spreadsheets. Not pleas, but procedures. He had chosen a dramatic scene. I was executing a strategic withdrawal, and in that withdrawal, I was removing every plank of the bridge he'd burned behind him. He was now stranded on the island of his own choosing, watching the waters rise. The paper trail was my first, and most peaceful, act of reclamation. The silence after Marcus's call was more informative than the conversation itself. His confusion was a tangible thing, left hanging in the air of Rita's kitchen. I finished updating the last financial account, logged out, and closed my laptop. The administrative fortress was built. Now I could observe the siege from within its walls. I spent the next day back in my own home, attempting to re-establish my routine. I had a client meeting scheduled for a color consultation. I spread fabric swatches and paint samples across my office desk, arranging them in gradients of slate blue and warm gray. The focus required was a welcome distraction. My phone, set to silent, vibrated against the wood. I glanced at it. The unknown number, a series of messages longer than usual. Unknown, asterisk the cracks are becoming canyons. You'll appreciate this. A screenshot followed. It was a text thread between Chloe and Marcus from the night before. Marcus, asterisk I don't understand why she's being so cold about this. It's like she never cared. Chloe, asterisk she's probably just hurt. Marcus, asterisk no, it's not hurt, it's calculation. She's always been like that. Ice in her veins. Chloe, asterisk you said you wanted passion. You got it. Now you're complaining she's not civil. Marcus, asterisk it's not civil, it's robotic. She's already lawyered up. She canceled my cards. Chloe, asterisk well, you did leave her. What did you expect? Marcus, asterisk I expected, I don't know. A reaction, something human, not this administrative dismantling. I studied the exchange. His frustration was palpable. He was trapped in a narrative loop, demanding a specific emotional performance from me that I refused to give. My refusal was, in itself, a reaction he couldn't process. Chloe's responses were deliberately mild, subtly nudging him to confront his own flawed expectations. She was playing him with a light, expert touch. Another message came through. Unknown, asterisk he's mourning the drama you denied him. It's hilarious. Then a new screenshot. This one was a voice memo transcript she'd apparently made. The text read, Marcus, voice, I just miss the little things, you know, my coffee machine. The way the sun hits the living room in the afternoon. This hotel room has no soul. Chloe, voice, you said her house was oppressive. Marcus, voice, it was, but it was familiar. This is just a room. I put my phone down and selected a paint sample, holding it up to the light. Seafoam glaze. It was a serene, soft green. I made a note for the client. I picked the phone up again. Me, asterisk he's homesick for a place he chose to disparage. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Our communication was becoming more synchronous. Unknown, asterisk exactly. He's a cliché, and cheap. He complained about the minibar prices for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, after declaring this our haven. Me, asterisk how are you tolerating it? Unknown, asterisk the same way you did, I imagine. By documenting the absurdity. It makes it bearable. Plus, I have a good audience now. Me, asterisk I'm a passive observer. Unknown, asterisk you're a repository. It's useful. Makes me feel less like a participant and more like a journalist. Her self-awareness was striking. She was reframing her own role from mistress to correspondent, and I was her editor. This shared, detached perspective created a perverse bond. We were not friends. We were co-conspirators in observing the same train wreck from different angles. Later that evening, another batch arrived. These were audio files. I waited until I was alone in my living room, the blueprints put away, before I listened. I plugged in headphones. The first clip was the sound of a television, then Marcus's voice, petulant. Can we order in? I'm sick of hotel food. It's all either overpriced or bland. Chloe's voice, distant. We can get whatever you want. Ava used to make this lemon herb chicken. It was perfect every time. A long pause. Are you seriously sitting here with me, talking about your wife's cooking? I'm just saying I miss a home-cooked meal. Is that a crime? The audio cut off. The second clip was from later. Marcus's voice was low, muffled, as if he was in the bathroom. She must have recorded through the door. Just don't get it. She's acting like I died, not like I left. It's like she's tidying up my memory, boxing me up. It's disrespectful. Then, the sound of a faucet turning on, obscuring the rest. I removed the headphones. The emotional trajectory was clear. The initial triumph had curdled into self-pity. The fantasy of being appreciated was colliding with the reality of being unknown. Chloe's appreciation was a mirror that showed him only what he wanted to see. Now the glass was cracking, and he was seeing his own reflection distort. My phone lit up with a final text. Unknown asterisk, he just asked me if I could learn to make lemon herb chicken. I told him I don't cook. He looked like a scolded child. This is your daily report. The facade is not just cracked, it's crumbling. I didn't reply. I sat in the quiet of my living room, the room whose afternoon light he missed. I felt no pity. I felt a cold, solid satisfaction. This was the natural consequence. He had traded a shared history with all its mundane comforts and subtle understandings for a staged performance with a stranger. Now the stage lights were too bright, the script was hollow, and his co-star was busy writing her own review. The informant's report was no longer just evidence. It was a real-time chronicle of a predictable downfall. My role was to receive it, archive it, and continue building my own world, one of carefully chosen colors, functional beauty, and a silence that was mine to define. The cracks in his facade were letting in a light he never expected, the clear, unforgiving light of reality. 3 days after Marcus left, the reports from Chloe took on a different tone. The amused detachment was still there, but beneath it ran a new current, impatience. The initial novelty of documenting his decline had worn thin for her. I could sense it in the brevity of her messages, the lack of commentary on the later audio clips. She was growing tired of her own experiment. I was at Rita, as had become my evening habit. We were finishing a simple pasta dinner when my phone buzzed on the table. It was not a text. It was a call. From Marcus. Rita's eyes locked onto the screen. "Do not answer that," she said, pointing her fork at me. "I wasn't going to," I said. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. A minute later, the notification popped up, one new voicemail. I played it on speaker. Sound that came out was not the tense, angry Marcus from the card call. It was a wet, ragged voice, thick with what sounded like tears. Ava, pick up, please," a heavy breath. She stood me up. Tonight was supposed to be, it was important. I made reservations. She just texted something came up. I've been sitting here for an hour, in this hotel bar, alone. His voice cracked. I don't understand what's happening. Everything is falling apart. I need to talk to you. I need to hear a familiar voice. Please call me back. The message ended. The silence in Rita's kitchen was profound. Rita's mouth had fallen open. She slowly put her fork down. "He's crying," she said, her voice a mix of disbelief and savage satisfaction. "The man who left you for appreciation is crying in a hotel bar because his appreciator has better things to do." I saved the voicemail. I filed it mentally under evidence of collapse. My primary feeling was not schadenfreude. It was a deep, weary recognition. This was the inevitable next step. The fantasy had a shelf life, and his had expired. The phone rang again, same number. Rita stared at it, then at me. "Your move." I considered letting it go to voicemail again, but there was a strategic value in direct engagement at this precise moment. His defenses were shattered. I could establish the finality of my position without the filter of his anger or pride. I answered, placing the phone on the table between us. "Marcus." He sounded startled that I had picked up. "Ava, you got my message." I did. She didn't come, she didn't even call, just a text. He was speaking quickly, the words tumbling out in a confused torrent. "I don't know what I did wrong. I've been trying so hard. This week it's been so hard. The hotel is so expensive and the food is terrible and she's just distant. And now this. I feel like such a fool." I waited for him to pause. He was breathing heavily into the phone. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, my voice neutral. "Sorry, that's all you have to say." The self-pity flickered toward familiar irritation. "Ava, my life is falling apart." "You made a choice, Marcus. Choices have consequences. This appears to be one of them." He was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, the tears were back in his voice. I think I made a mistake, a huge mistake." I looked at Rita. She had both hands pressed over her mouth, her eyes wide above them. "That is a possibility you should examine," I said. "Can we talk, really talk? Not through lawyers, can I come over just to talk?" "No," I said. The word was flat, final. That is not appropriate. Our communication will be through our legal representatives regarding the separation. That is the only relationship we have left. You can't just turn 15 years off like a switch, he cried, his voice rising. You did, I reminded him, my tone still calm. You declared it over. I am simply agreeing with you and handling the necessary arrangements. What happens in your new life is not my concern. But I'm miserable. The pronouncement was a wail, a child's complaint. I hope it works out for you, Marcus, I said, repeating the phrase I had used days before. It was a polite, meaningless sentiment, a verbal door closing. Ava, wait. Goodbye, I ended the call. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Rita's hands slid from her face. She wasn't laughing anymore. She looked at me with something like awe. You just. I stated the facts, I said. He is miserable. That is his condition, not my problem. But he was sobbing. He admitted he made a mistake. And you offered him zero comfort, zero lifeline. A lifeline is for someone drowning in a situation they didn't choose, I said, stacking our plates. He jumped into that water. He called it appreciation. I am not throwing a rope to a man who voluntarily swam away from the shore. Rita shook her head slowly. I knew you were strong, but that was clinical, beautifully, brutally clinical. He was begging for a scrap of your old empathy, and you gave him a statement of policy. I carried the plates to the sink. My hands were steady. The call had evoked no pity, no urge to rescue. It had only confirmed the accuracy of my assessment. He was not a tragic figure. He was an architect of his own discomfort, and he was finally noticing the poor construction. My phone buzzed with a text. I assumed it was him again, but it was the unknown number. Unknown asterisk so. He called you, right? Crying in his champagne. I showed Rita. Me asterisk he did. Unknown asterisk good. My work here is almost done. He's officially a pathetic burden. Can't wait to ditch the dead weight. Me asterisk understood. Unknown asterisk get ready. The finale is going to be public. He deserves an audience for his final act. I put the phone down. The first reality check was complete. His fantasy was broken. His retreat had been met with a locked door. Now, according to the informant, the final act was being written. My role was shifting from archivist to invited spectator. The weeping voicemail was not the climax. It was the cue for the next and final scene. The message hung in the air between Rita and me. The finale is going to be public. It was not a warning. It was an invitation. Rita read it over my shoulder. Public, she whispered, as if the phone itself might be listening. What does that mean? I typed a reply. Me asterisk explain. The 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. She was crafting her response. Unknown asterisk he's clinging. After the crying call to you, he's desperate to prove this is still a grand romance. He's begging for a reconciliation dinner to make up for standing him up. I've agreed. Unknown asterisk I told him to take me somewhere special, somewhere public and expensive. He suggested the Cressida. I felt a cold ripple of recognition. The Cressida was my favorite restaurant. It was where we went for anniversaries, where I took important clients. The irony would be irresistible to him. He would see it as a victory, dining there with his new love. He was that transparent. Unknown asterisk I know it's your spot. That's why I suggested it. He thinks it was his idea. Unknown asterisk Saturday night, 8 p.m. I'm going to end it there. In the middle of the dining room, I'm going to make sure everyone hears. Unknown asterisk want front row seats. I showed Rita the cascade of texts. Her eyes widened as she read. She's going to destroy him at the Cressida, in public, and she's asking if you want to watch. That's the proposal, I said. It's a trap for him, and she's offering you a viewing platform. Rita sat back, crossing her arms. Do you want to go? I considered. Witnessing his humiliation firsthand was not necessary. I had the voicemail. I had the archives. I had the legal documents being drafted. My victory was already quiet and assured. But Chloe's offer presented a unique opportunity. closure in the form of a definitive, third-party execution of the fantasy. It would be the period at the end of the sentence he had written. "I think I do," I said, the decision solidifying as I spoke. Not for revenge, for verification, to see the story end with my own eyes. Rita nodded slowly. "Then we go, but we don't sit in the dining room, we sit at the bar, we observe, we are not participants." "Agreed." I texted Chloe back. "Me, asterisk the bar, will be there." Her reply was instantaneous. "Unknown, asterisk excellent, wear something nice, it's a show." The next 2 days were a study in suspended animation. The legal separation agreement arrived from Helen. I signed it without hesitation and returned it. His signed copy was pending, lost in the chaos of his personal life. It no longer mattered. The outcome was inevitable. I focused on practical preparations. I called the Cressida. I knew the maitre d', Gabriel. I gave my name. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, his voice warm. "A table for Saturday. It is quite busy, but for you." "Not a table, Gabriel. A reservation for 2 at the bar. Around 7:30. Something relatively quiet, if possible." There was a slight pause. He was accustomed to booking our regular corner table in the dining room. "Of course, the bar. Is everything all right?" "Everything is fine," I said, my tone pleasant and closed. "Just a quiet drink with a friend." "I will arrange it personally." I thanked him and hung up. I did not mention that my husband would be in the dining room with another woman. Gabriel would discover that for himself. On Saturday afternoon, Rita came over to my house. We laid out our clothes on my bed, a simple, elegant black dress for me, a tailored jumpsuit for her. We were not dressing for Marcus or for Chloe. We were dressing for ourselves, for the ritual of the evening. "What do you think she'll do?" Rita asked, applying a subtle lipstick at my vanity. "I think she will be brutal," I said, fastening a necklace. "She has no emotional investment left. She views him as a tedious project she needs to discard. Publicly severing him ensures he cannot cling. It's efficient." "And you're okay with that, with her being the one to do it?" "He chose her as the instrument of his liberation from me," I said. "It is fitting that she becomes the instrument of his humiliation. It's a closed loop." At 7:15, we left the house. The drive to the Cressida was quiet. The restaurant was in a renovated brick warehouse by the river, its windows glowing warmly against the night. Valet attendants moved briskly. Gabriel greeted us at the host stand. His eyes flickered over me, taking in the fact that I was with Rita, not Marcus, and that we were heading for the bar. His professional mask remained perfect. "Your seats are ready, Mrs. Johnson. Right this way." The bar area was separated from the main dining room by a low wall of antique glass and dark wood. Our stools were at the far end, partially obscured by a large floral arrangement. From here, we had a direct sightline into the dining room, but we were shadowed private. It was the perfect vantage point. Gabriel handed us menus. "Can I start you with a drink?" "A bottle of the St. Veron," I said. It was a white burgundy, crisp and clean. Marcus hated white wine. "Excellent choice." Rita leaned close as Gabriel walked away. "Can you see their table?" I scanned the room. It took a moment. Then I saw him. He was at a prime table in the center of the room. He was wearing a suit I recognized, one he thought made him look distinguished. He was nervously smoothing his napkin on his lap. The seat across from him was empty. "He's there," I said, my voice low. "She's not." Rita followed my gaze. Fashionably late, of course. Our wine arrived. I poured 2 glasses. We sipped. The restaurant hummed with the sound of conversation, clinking glassware, quiet laughter. It was a soundscape of normalcy, against which Marcus's anxious solitude was stark. He checked his phone. He adjusted his silverware. He looked toward the entrance every 30 seconds. At 8:15, she appeared. Chloe. I had only seen her in the grainy photos and videos. In person, she was striking. She wore a crimson dress that commanded attention. She moved through the dining room with a confident, dismissive grace, barely acknowledging the host who led her to the table. She did not apologize for her lateness. She sat, allowing Marcus to scramble to push in her chair. From our distance, I could not hear their words, but I could read the bodies. Marcus's posture was eager, leaning forward, hands animated in explanation. Chloe was rigid, leaning back in her chair, one arm draped over the back, listening. She picked up her menu, studied it, said something. Marcus laughed, a little too loud, a nervous bark that cut through the murmur. The show was on. Our glasses were full. We waited. The setup was complete. Now we watched for the main course. From our shadowed seats, the scene unfolded like a silent film with muffled audio. We saw the waiter deliver a bottle of wine, red, something showy, no doubt his choice. Marcus made a production of tasting it, nodding his approval. Chloe barely glanced at her glass. She took a small sip and set it down, her attention drifting around the room as he spoke. Their first courses arrived. He ate with nervous enthusiasm, gesturing with his fork as he talked. She pushed food around her plate. The distance between them was a physical chasm, visible even across the dining room. His attempts to bridge it grew more frantic. At one point, he reached across the table to touch her hand. She withdrew it to pick up her wineglass. Rita leaned close to my ear. He's performing for an audience of one who isn't watching. I nodded. My own wine was cool and tart on my tongue. I felt no anticipation, only a detached curiosity about the mechanics of the coming detonation. The main courses were cleared. He ordered dessert, something chocolate, extravagant. She declined. He looked confused, then wounded. He was trying to follow a script of a romantic reconciliation, and she was refusing to read her lines. It was after the dessert was served, after he took 2 bites and pushed the plate away, that the atmosphere shifted. Chloe had been speaking to him, her face a mask of cold concentration. He was listening, his head tilted, a faint, confused smile on his lips. Then the smile froze. His posture stiffened. She placed her napkin on the table with deliberate care. Then she stood up. The movement was not dramatic, but it was decisive. In the refined hush of the Cressida, the simple act of someone rising from a central table drew glances. Conversations nearby dipped in volume. She did not raise her voice at first, but it carried. It was a clear, piercing tone, devoid of warmth. No, Marcus, I'm not being difficult. I'm being honest. For the first time since you started sniffing around my desk. His face flushed a deep, mottled red. He looked around, a rabbit in a snare. Chloe, please, sit down. Let's discuss this privately. Why? Her voice rose a fraction, enough to cut through the remaining murmur. You love an audience. You loved having an audience when you were complaining about your wife, about her coldness, her complacency. She made air quotes with her fingers, a viciously mocking gesture. You know what your problem is, Marcus? You're a boring, cheap, narcissistic man-baby. A collective gasp seemed to suck the air from the room. Every head in the vicinity turned. Waiters froze. Gabriel, the maitre d', took a half step forward from his post, then hesitated. Marcus was speechless, his mouth opening and closing. He started to stand, perhaps to try to usher her out. She didn't let him. You left a woman who built a beautiful life for you because she didn't spend enough time applauding your mediocre achievements. You traded a home for a hotel room and then cried because the water pressure wasn't good enough. You asked me to learn to cook your wife's recipes. She let out a short, harsh laugh. You are a punchline, Marcus. A sad, predictable punchline. Tears were now streaming down his face, mingling with the sweat on his temples. He was utterly broken, exposed under the glittering lights of the chandelier. Chloe looked down at him, her expression one of pure disgust. She picked up her nearly full glass of red wine. For a second, I thought she would throw it in his face. Instead, with a contemptuous flick of her wrist, she poured it over his half-eaten dessert, the dark liquid soaking into the chocolate and staining the white plate. It was a symbolic, brutal gesture. Enjoy your dessert, she said, her voice now dropping but no less clear in the stunned silence. And enjoy the rest of your very, very small life. She turned. She did not look at anyone. She walked, back straight, head high, through the gauntlet of staring diners and out of the dining room. The crimson dress was a disappearing flag of triumph. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the room erupted in a torrent of whispers. Marcus remained in his chair, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. A waiter approached cautiously, then retreated. He was a pariah, an island of spectacular disgrace. Rita's hand was clamped over her own mouth, her eyes wide with shock. I realized I had stopped breathing. I took a slow, deliberate breath in, then out. We did not speak. We exchanged a single look. It was time to go. I caught Gabriel's eye from across the room and gave a slight nod. He understood. He would ensure our bill was handled discreetly. I left a generous cash tip on the bar, far more than the cost of the wine. We stood and walked out. We did not look toward Marcus's table. We moved through the lobby, past the valet stand, into the cool night air. Rita's car was brought around. Only when the doors were closed, when the sound of the restaurant was sealed outside, did she let out a long, shuddering breath. "My God," she whispered. She eviscerated him. "Yes," I said, looking out the window as the city lights blurred past. "She did. Are you okay?" I considered the question. I felt no exhilaration, no pity. I felt a profound, settling calm. It was over. The public, humiliating climax had occurred exactly as orchestrated, but witnessing it did not feel like a victory lap. It felt like a confirmation. The fantasy was not just dead. It had been publicly autopsied, and the findings were as petty and shallow as I had always suspected. "I'm fine," I said, and it was the truth. The spectacle was his. The silence that followed was mine. We drove the rest of the way home in a quiet that was companionable, heavy with the weight of a concluded story. The main course had been served, and it had been his own character, served back to him on a silver platter, spoiled and inedible. My appetite for the whole affair was now completely gone. The morning after the Cressida was a Sunday. Sunlight poured into my living room, illuminating the dust motes in the air, cleaning the shadows from the corners. I was sitting in my favorite armchair, a sketchbook on my lap, a cup of coffee steaming on the side table. I was working on a new concept for a client's sunroom, all light wood and airy fabrics, a space designed for clarity. The house was silent in the way I had come to cherish. It was a silence full of potential, not absence. My phone rang. It was him. I looked at the screen at his name. I felt nothing. No dread, no anger, no curiosity. It was simply an incoming call that required handling. I picked it up. "Ava," his voice was a ruined thing, shredded and raw. It was the voice of a man who had not slept, who had been crying for hours. "Ava, she. "I know what she did, Marcus," I said, my tone even. "I was there." There was a stunned silence. You were there." "At the bar, I saw it." He made a choking sound. You saw her humiliate me, and you did nothing." "What would you have had me do?" I asked. It was a genuine question. "I don't know, anything. She destroyed me, Ava, in front of everyone. People I know were there. Colleagues they saw." He was sobbing openly now, the words gulped between wet, ragged breaths. "She called me a man-baby. She poured wine, everyone was starring, my life is over." He continued, spiraling. He described the walk of shame out of the restaurant, the sleepless night in the hotel, the certainty that he would be a laughingstock at work. He repeated her insults as if I hadn't heard them the first time. His agony was total, self-absorbed, and profoundly petty. I listened. I held the phone to my ear and looked out at the sunlit garden. And as he recounted, in hysterical detail, the precise phrasing Chloe had used, boring, cheap, narcissistic, something shifted inside me. A pressure valve, held shut for 5 months, for 15 years, suddenly blew open. It started as a small tremor in my diaphragm, a hiccup of air, then another. I tried to stifle it, but it was too powerful. A laugh burst out of me, short, sharp, and utterly involuntary. He stopped mid-sob. What is it?" I couldn't stop. The laugh came again, longer this time. It was not a laugh of cruelty. It was not a laugh of triumph. It was the pure, physical release of an immense, impossible tension. The sheer, absurd contrast between his theatrical despair and my quiet, sunlit morning was suddenly, overwhelmingly funny. The grand tragedy he was narrating was, in fact, a farce he had written, directed, and starred in. Are you laughing?" His voice was a mixture of horror and disbelief. I laughed until my eyes watered. I laughed until I had to put the sketchbook down. I laughed until the sound echoed in my empty, peaceful living room. It was a cleansing, ragged, joyful noise. It was the sound of a weight I had long carried being vaporized. "How can you laugh?" he shrieked, his own tears turning to rage. "This is all your fault. Your calm, your ice, you drove me to this." His words only made me laugh harder. The final, desperate attempt to blame me was the punchline to the entire joke. When I could finally catch my breath, when the laughter subsided into shaky, tearful giggles, I wiped my eyes. "Goodbye, Marcus," I said, my voice warm and clear from the laughter. "Ava, wait." I ended the call. I placed the phone on the table, screen down. I picked up my coffee. It was still warm. I took a sip. The laughter had left a quiet in its wake, a quiet deeper than before. It had scoured out the last remnants of shared history, of lingering obligation, of residual hurt. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to feel. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Rita. "Rita, asterisk, okay, I've waited all morning. What happened? Did he call?" "Me, asterisk, he called." "Rita, asterisk, and." "Me, asterisk, and I laughed." The three dots danced for a moment. "Rita, asterisk, you laughed. At his weeping post-public humiliation call. Ava Johnson, I have never been prouder." "Me, asterisk, it's over." "Rita, asterisk, I know. Come for dinner. We're celebrating with actual champagne, not the hotel kind." I smiled. "Me, asterisk, I'll be there at 7. I set the phone aside. I picked up my pencil and looked back at my sketch. The lines were clean, the perspective sound. I added a note about using filtered, diffused light. The sun moved across the floor, warming the wood. I sat there for a long time, not thinking, just being. The silence was no longer something to be endured. It was a companion. The space around me was no longer a shared possession to be negotiated. It was a reflection. Every object, every texture, every ray of light was a choice I had made or would make. The story was finished. The last page had turned. The sound that closed it was not a slam or a sob or a dramatic pronouncement. It was the sound of my own laughter, ringing in a room of my own design, followed by the sweet, profound, and utterly controllable sound of silence.